Host Melissa Rosenblum is one of only a few women certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey as a criminal trial attorney. When you add kids, a booming law business, and a little black book full of subject matter experts, you've got the Mighty Merp podcast.
This Mighty Merp conversation features Michael Fedorko, who, among other things, is a former superintendent of the New Jersey State Police.
1993, you served as New Jersey State Police when you were responsible for training.
Commandant at the State Police Academy.
And then in 95, you were promoted to major.
Correct.
96, you were transferred to the administration section as major and held chief administrative officer of 4,000 members of New Jersey State Police.
Yes, correct.
Wow. There's more, but I'm going to let you tell it. Actually, after, 97, you were promoted to lieutenant colonel and named executive officer of the New Jersey State Police. And then in 97, later that year, in November, you were promoted to the position of deputy superintendent of New Jersey State Police. In 98, you were appointed acting superintendent by Governor Christine Todd Whitman. So you were overseeing the whole New Jersey State Police.
Yes, I did.
And then they forced you to retire?
Well, we have a mandatory retirement at 55, so.
55, wow, that seems wrong. That's young.
It is young. It is young, and I'm surprised it hasn't been changed, but it's law, so.
That's crazy. So I wanted to talk to you about leadership because it looks like throughout your whole career, whether you started knowing that you were going to be a leader from the beginning, it seems like in every job you had, you were a leader. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, every time you get promoted, you're in a leadership position, starting off in small groups, and then as you get promoted higher and higher, the groups get bigger and bigger and bigger.
So, but before we get into really my big questions about leadership, I'm going to ask you sort of what your origin story is, where you're from and raised. And my biggest question is, it's going to start with, how old were you when you joined the Marines? And I know you were in Vietnam. Was that voluntary? Did you enlist? Were you drafted? How did that occur?
Okay. So you want me to start where I was born in Lakeland, Florida, during the end of the Second World War. I don't know where my father was because he would never talk about it, but my mother was living on the Army Air Force base. And I was born in the Army Air Force Hospital in Lakeland, Florida, which I found out about 10 years ago is now the Detroit Tigers training facility, spring training facility. So at the end of the war, we came back to Trenton. I grew up in Trenton and went to schools in Trenton. And is that me or is that you?
So you grew up in Trenton?
I grew up in Trenton. I went to school, high school in Trenton. Went to college it was then Trenton State, but now it's the College of New Jersey. And that was when I was in the state police. I went to college. So,
but before you served before you went back to college.
I did. I had a football scholarship to West Virginia University.
That does make sense. I know it's a podcast and nobody can see what Mike Fedorko looks like, but he looks like a linebacker still.
But my school closed at the end of my junior year, and I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, and the priests were scattered all over the country, and they wanted films, which I couldn't find. Anyway, they wanted to send me to a junior college, and by the time all this was over, the coach told me, well, I have to wait till next year. So I lost interest, to be honest with you. And I started working, and it was about that time that I decided I wanted to be a trooper.
And how old were you at that time?
18.
You were 18 and knew you wanted to be a trooper.
Yeah.
And What year is this?
1964.
Okay.
So I worked for 3 years for the state. It was then called the Highway Department. It's now the Department of Transportation. And I took the state police test when I was 20 years old. And I went through the whole testing process. I didn't get accepted because I had asthma as a kid. And when I went for my draft physical, they said, well, we'll classify you as 1Y, which means you'll only get called in time of war or national emergency. So I went to see the sergeant first class at the state police, who was in HR, which you're allowed to do. And he said, listen, I can't tell you this, but if you go in the military, I think we'll take you. So I had a friend of mine whose name was Tony DeCesar. I grew up with him, played football with him. And I told him what was going on. He said, well, I'm going to Paris Island in 20 days. He said, why don't we go together? And I said, okay, good. So I went down and saw the recruiter. And he said, geez, I don't know if I can get you in or not. I said, well, you got 20 days. If you can get me in, I'll go. So we went in on the buddy plan, which was a joke because the last time I saw Tony was when we were getting our haircuts. I didn't see him for the next 14 weeks. And he was in the floor above me, the platoon above me. But anyway, so we graduated from Paris Island the same day. While I was in Paris Island, and I always thought this was kind of funny, I got my draft notice from the Army, which was an interesting time. The drill instructors had a lot of fun with that. So
you were going to Vietnam, whether you enlisted or not, I guess.
Probably, yeah, because when I went in and told my father that I was going in the Marines, he said, Johnson just sent 100,000 people to Vietnam. That's probably where you're going to end up. And I said, yeah, well, what are you going to do? This is my goal. I got to do this because this is what I want to do.
So you served 7 years in the military.
6. Well, 6.5. Yeah, 6.5. And
you were wounded in your second year?
I was wounded in my second year, yeah. I was at a place called Quai Son, which is about a half a mile south of the DMZ. And it was an interesting place to be. Surrounded by mountains, and there was a lot of stuff going on there all the time. So.
And you were discharged in 1972 honorably, and then did you apply? Is that when you went to the state police?
No, I was in the reserves for a couple of years, and that's when I had taken the state police test. I went into the academy in October of 1968 and graduated in February of 1969, and I started my state police career.
There you go. So all of this was to get to the state police, the end goal.
Right.
So, in the end, I know you were initially a trooper, everyone starts off, right, as a trooper, but it seems like you promoted quickly through the ranks, at least when I'm reading, your bio and your resume. So, what do you think that was? Is that something about you specifically, or is there like a way to follow a certain plan to be able to be promoted like that in the state police?
I think for the most part, you do a good job and people notice you, but a lot of times it was because somebody retired or resigned or something like that. But yeah, I got promoted to sergeant because a trooper that I was working with who had rank left. He retired. So I got promoted. That's the biggest jump because there's such a big pool to promote from.
So you're saying it's hard work and a little bit of luck?
Yeah, very hard work. Yeah, all the jobs that I've had in the state police and at the Port Authority, they're not 8-hour-a-day jobs. And I think I realized that if I wanted to get ahead, you have to You have to put time in. I mean, working for governors work 12, 14, 16 hours a day sometimes. So, you have to do it.
Did you apply for that position, or were you asked to be in that position? How do you get assigned to the Executive Protection Bureau if someone was interested?
You put in for it, you have to be interviewed, and you get picked for it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. There is more to come. Mighty Merp is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com. That's mightymerp.com. Mighty Merp is a production of the Law Office of Melissa Rosenblum and the Niche Podcast Network.